host has spent decades studying the Bible in the original languages. He holds degrees from the University of Wisconsin, Moody Bible Institute, Asbury Theological Seminary, and Bethel Theological Seminary. With the help of some of his friends, in 1994, Dr. Rako founded a national volunteer ministry to hunters. He is an author, dog trainer, and speaker. Tom served as a full-time pastor for 36 years. Now here is your host, Dr. Tom Rako.
Thanks for joining us here on the Rock Dove Publications Quilt. During today's program, we're going to be looking at Charlie, an excerpt adapted from Devotions for Dog Lovers. I'll also be talking about what the real value of a dog is. How much is a dog really worth? I hope you enjoyed today's program. Charlie. The bronze plaque on the gravestone revealed that Charlie had lived a full 14 years. But more importantly, the words on the engraved metal plate spelled out the special relationship Charlie had enjoyed. It read, "Our little boy, beloved grandson, we will always love you." However, the one referred to as our little boy, beloved grandson, wasn't this couple's grandchild. In fact, he wasn't even human. Rather, Charlie was a dog, and this particular gravesite was part of a specially designated place for burying dead animals, a pet cemetery. Other markers were inscribed with words like, "The best friend I ever had," or "I will love you forever." On one was placed a basket full of rawhide bones. Nevertheless, we need to keep in mind that dogs were never designed to compete with or crowd out human relationships. What a tragedy when we place a high, and in some cases even higher value, on animals as we do on people. According to the Bible, what sets humans apart from other creatures is that humans have been made in God's likeness, James chapter 3, verse 9. Furthermore, don't you wonder if some of the time that was showered on Charlie might have been better shared or invested in a little boy or girl who lived in the couple's neighborhood? Now, whether we want to admit it or not, in much of modern society, dogs aren't always treated as such. Often they are elevated to positions of adoration that they were never intended to occupy. Indeed, things like pet cemeteries are visible proof of the high value placed on animals we love. Now, I'm not against pet cemeteries. In fact, I have to confess, I've always secretly wanted to own one. Unfortunately, when we overindulge our pets and begin treating them as if they were human, we not only harm them, but also other people in the process. Today, dogs are frequently fed too much, exercise too little, and receive far better medical care than most of the world's children. The focus that we've had upon animals and how we have elevated them is problematic. Once Jesus was approached by a Syrophoenician woman regarding her little daughter who was possessed by an evil spirit. She was not Jewish, but rather an outsider. Yet she was convinced that Christ could and would make a difference, and eventually he did. Even so, Jesus tested this woman's faith by initially putting her off. He then went on to make a remark that would have seemed more like an insult. "First, let the children eat all they want," he told her, "for it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to their dogs." Mark 7:27. But she would not be dissuaded. This Greek woman agreed with his remark. She said, "Yes, Lord," and then went on to reason, "But even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs." Mark 7:28. Yes, Christ put a bigger price tag on humans than upon animals, and so should we. But then again, perhaps the problem isn't that we think too highly of animals. Could it be that the real problem is that we haven't valued humans nearly enough? When we come back, we'll be answering the question, how much is a dog worth?
You can learn more about the book that tells this true story and others For example, find out how dogs in Bible times were used to fulfill specific prophecies. Discover how some dogs with disabilities did some amazing things. Hear how a dog collected money for orphans. Learn about the first canine to be launched into outer space. Gain insight as to how God is using dogs in our world today, and much more. To order your copy of Devotions for Dog Lovers, go to the Rock Dove Publications website at www.rockdove.com. Again, to get your copy of Devotions for Dog Lovers, visit rockdove.com.
How much is a dog worth? The event I'm going to be talking about took place on January 2nd, 2025. And I just had to do it. I knew in my head that it was dangerous, or at least incredibly foolish. I also knew that in some cases when a canine breaks through the ice, they end up surviving, while the would-be human rescuer ultimately perishes. I would have personally tried to stop anyone from doing what I eventually did. And experts tell us that the best thing to do is call 911 or at least wait for those with equipment to help ensure a safe rescue. You see, I was hunting a remote area along the Missouri River in South Dakota with my friend Travis. A few miles away, another friend named Pat was hearing rooster pheasants cackling a short distance from where he was ice fishing. Travis needed to leave and pick up his son from school, so I headed a couple of miles down the road to pursue the pheasants that had been sounding off. Although I never hunted this particular piece of public land, I could see Pat's ice fishing setup. He was the only person present on the ice, so the pheasants had to be nearby. Letting two pointers out, Latte and Favor, letting them out of the car, I started working my way around the hill. It wasn't long before we reached a spillway that dumped into the Missouri. There was good cover, and the ice where I was standing seemed safe. In fact, there was a deer track going across. However, about 100 yards further downstream, I noticed a patch of open water. I decided to head back along the bank away from the open water. My female Latte started coming, and so did Favor. And then suddenly, my female Latte broke through the ice. She began splashing and trying to get out, and the ice wouldn't allow her to get up. It kept breaking away. And yet she couldn't keep breaking it away to go in any direction. She just kept going around in circles. She spun a number of times, attempting to get out any way that she could. And I saw her. She was getting tired. It was cold. It was about 20 degrees. I was trying to coax her to come. I went down and got as close as I could. I was in these weeds that I thought were a bank, and I kept urging her. But then suddenly, despite what I was thinking with my head, my heart took over. It was all rather surreal. I hurriedly laid down my shotgun in the weeds where I was standing, then stretched out on the ice on my stomach. Attempting to redistribute my weight, I put my arms out to each side as if stretched out on the cross, and I cautiously wormed my way forward. When I got close, I slid my hands up together above my head as if diving towards the hole, and Latte was now violently thrashing about. I called her name, and she headed towards the edge of the hole near me. I slid a little further towards her. Then just as she reached that place next to me, I reached out and touched her collar, and that's when it happened. Suddenly, the ice collapsed, and instantly both Latte and I were enveloped by the shocking cold ice-sharded water. A thought flashed in my mind. So this is how it ends. I struggled to the top, gasping for air. I do not know how deep the water really was there, but I was not touching bottom. The dog and myself were struggling together to get out of the freezing water. I tried to get back on the ice, but with every attempt I got my elbows up, the ice would break and caved in. Even when I got to my shotgun, where I had previously been standing, the ice kept giving away. My gun went down, Just as it went under, I grabbed it and kept breaking the ice and grabbed the dog by the collar and kind of gave her a thrust. She got up, and eventually we got to our knees and to our feet, and then I heard Favor splash. Probably about 6 feet to my left in the weeds, he went in, and I knew it was deep. But because of the weeds, he was evidently able to get out. And so we all got out. We staggered up the hill to dry ground, and it was then that I realized that the action camera I had been carrying in my head was gone. I didn't have it turned on, but in all the excitement, I had not thought of taking it off. Of course, a dog's value is often determined by a person's emotional or sentimental attachment. Indeed, it would be difficult to assign a price tag to a family pet. However, value is also determined by such things as rarity of the breed, current fads, competition or championships won, stage of training, set stud fee, the age, the pedigree, and more. Sometimes the value of dog is seen in the offspring produced. For example, my dogs all have some guardrail in them. He was a famous dog that died in 1984. And Hall of Fame champion Guardrail was an important pointer and recognized for having exceptional genetic influence. In his book, Snakefoot, The Making of a Champion, the late Bob Wheely, who is well known for developing the L-Hue bloodline within the pointers, he explained part of the reason he incorporated Guardrail into his breeding program. He wrote, he was used because he had already proven his great prepotency. There are also cultural influences that affect how a dog's value is perceived. In ancient Egypt, for example, the dog was held in high esteem. During Bible times and in some countries today, dogs have been used for herding and guarding. They have also been viewed as scavengers, those that go and pick up things. In fact, in Exodus 22:31, here's what God told his people: "You are to be my holy people. You must not eat the meat of a mauled animal found in the field. You are to throw it to the dogs." David said in Psalm 59, verses 4-7, "For no fault of my own, they move swiftly to attack me. Arise to help me and take notice, O Lord God of hosts, the God of Israel. Rouse yourself to punish all the nations. Show no mercy to the wicked traitors." Selah. And then he says, "They return in the evening, snarling like dogs and prowling about the city. See what they spew from their mouths, sharp words from their lips. For who can hear us?" In Isaiah 56, here's what Isaiah said: "Israel's watchmen are blind. They are all oblivious. They are all mute dogs. They cannot bark. They are dreamers, lying around, loving to slumber. Like ravenous dogs, they are never satisfied." In fact, there were prophecies regarding some of the kings and that their families would be eaten by dogs after they were slaughtered off. And ultimately, these scavengers, these dogs, would consume the flesh of the enemies of God's people. Indeed, down through history, dogs have been held in both low and high esteem. You know, I personally owe a lot to dogs. I'm thankful that God created them and that he preserved a pair of the ark. They have helped me through some very difficult times. God has used them to comfort me. And indeed, every creature holds intrinsic value because it has been created by God. Yet dogs were never intended to compete with or crowd out humans. As incredible as dogs are, they are inferior to humans. What sets humans apart from all other creatures is that humans have been made in the image of God. In Matthew chapter 12, Jesus entered a synagogue on the Sabbath, a place for Jewish teaching and worship. There was a man with a shriveled hand, and some in the synagogue thought it was wrong to heal on the Sabbath. Of course, Jesus healed this man, and the Bible tells us, he said to them, "If any of you has a sheep and it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will you not take hold of it and lift it out? How much more valuable is a person than a sheep? Therefore it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath." Matthew 12, verses 11-12. And again in Luke chapter 12, verses 6-7, Jesus told his disciples, "Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 pennies? Yet not one of them is forgotten by God. Indeed, the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Do not be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows. In fact, the soul, the life of just one person is more valuable than all the material goods of this world. Jesus asked this question in Matthew chapter 16, verse 26. What good will it do for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? You know, friend, you are of great value to the Creator. God does not make junk. Yes, we are fallen creatures. We are marred. We are damaged. And yet the Bible tells us that God sent his Son into the world that we might live through him. 1 John 4:9 says, this is how God showed his love among us. He sent his one and only Son into the world that we might live through him. You know, I hope that there's no one listening that would make the same mistake I did. You know, there's some other ways you can kind of protect yourself from this. One individual said he always carries 100-foot of parachute cord in his pocket. You know, you can kind of loop the dog. You can have a vest on the dog, or you can avoid these areas as much as you can. And this is the only time I've ever had this experience. But, you know, would it have been worth me losing my life? I had one individual told me that he knew of an individual that went out to rescue his dog, and he died, and the dog died while his son watched. How tragic. You are of great value, friend. You know, a dog is of great value to me and probably to many people. How do you put a price tag on a family pet? But humans have been made in God's image. You know, that's what James says, and that's what the book of Genesis tells us, that they have been made. We have been made in the image of God. There's something very special. And he has given us dogs and other pets to share. God knows that we get great comfort and encouragement and joy. And but ultimately, you are of such tremendous worth. It's just incredible. And I hope you realize that. Thanks for joining us here today, and I hope you'll listen again next time.
You've been listening to the Rock Dove Publications podcast with your host, Dr. Tom Rako. This program has also been brought to you by the Quilted Arrow, home of intelligent, stylish, field-bred English pointers with bloodline streams from Hall of Fame champion Guardrail. Thank you so much for listening. Now, this is Beth Rako inviting you to join us again next time on the Rock Dove Publications podcast.